They came from faraway places to march on a freedom trail. They sang a new revolution from the songs their fathers made.
Hello, this is Mike Hanrahan again, and it's 1921. I'm so delighted to be once again part of the Clare County Library, a decade of the centenary celebration, and particularly part of their History Week, which I've been involved in for the last few years. It's a great honour for me to be involved. It has been an incredible journey for me. I'm not sure if I'll be taking on the Civil War somehow, because it just seems the last couple of years of the War of Independence have been quite brutal, particularly this period from towards the end of 20 to the middle of 21 was quite vicious, and it was very tough reading some of the stories and the accounts, and thankfully we have all these amazing historians in County Clare who have written some incredible books. They're all here behind me. I eat them up. I love the research. But I'm not a historian. I came to this as a songwriter. I came to this as a guy who was taken in by the beauty of the creative people who lived over 100 years ago and began a cultural revolution or a cultural revival, whatever people want to call it. And that's what attracted me into the songs. It's interesting that there are very few books written in our history about County Clare up to recent times. But there was a lot of songs. We recorded everything in song, and I'm so delighted I found a lot of songs thanks to the Clare Library in a lot of instances. But I met people, and people were sending me songs, and then through my own research of finding songbooks, and I discovered a treasure of amazing songs and stories. It is really interesting that in the early stages of the war, prior to the war in 1917, when Davis by-election was held in East Clare, that the lyric in the song is quite naive and kind of simple, in a sense that it's almost like putting one-upmanship on the British and the RIC, and the language of the song changes dramatically over the years then. I did find some really great songs about the election a few years ago. That I haven't recorded them, so I think I might just give you a blast of them. But it was the De Valera song was one. O men of the Banner County, now closely watch today, and vote for your ancestors in an independent way. The seats between two contests, their names you all did hear. One is a castle servant, and the other is Devilier. Hold up your heads, strong parents, pay heed to what I say. But for this noble heroes, your sons would be forced away to fight the gallant German with no power on earth to fear. So go out and choose the next, and be sure to vote for your man, Devilier. Something like that, anyway. There was another one that I came across, and I always noticed that a lot of these songs had no melodies at all, written for them especially. They tended to take the melodies of the day, so I found tunes like the Mountains of Mourn, and I found them attached to several songs, which was a beautiful air. Anyway, here's one of them. Well, the election is over, I hope you agree, for the right man is in. We sent home the KC, for now we can be singing and dancing our jig, and we'll tell Paddy Lynch to go home for his wig. I was addressing a crowd down at Mick Carmody's hotel. I won't say who they were, for you know them too well. Those seeps with their bottles and kids without shoes, and a few drunken men whistling mad through their flutes. Then up comes poor Lawler, and unto them said, I've been beaten today, and I have a sore head. The blackguards of Scariff, 'tis we'll put them down, for if Lynch is elected, we'll smash up the town. The seat in Kilkenny, you know it's all full, for that is another great blow to John Bull. And all the Irish party are dying out one by one, of shock and heart failure, they're all nearly gone. The sight of that number, whilst they were alive, 2,975, has put them to sleep, so that they might forget the East Clare election has them there asleep yet. The following year, they would have had a landslide victory all over the country in the 1918 election. They won most of the seats. They were helped greatly by the women, the Cumann na mBan and all other women's organisations, because most historians would believe now that without that support of the women, they wouldn't have got the votes that they got. The women got people out to vote. So the women were very much part of that election, as was the Labour movement, because the Labour Party stood back and allowed Sinn Féin to go for the 1918 election as well. One of my favourite writers was Brian O'Higgins. He was a prolific writer, incredible. In fact, he could write really vicious lyrics in one song that would describe an incident quite clearly and dramatically. And then he'd write this most beautiful love song. Or then he'd write his tongue-in-cheek songs. I came across so many of them. The man from the Daily Mail was one of them, where the Daily Mail guy's reporting back to his London boss from County Clare, saying that there'll be another rising, said the man from the Daily Mail. It was a very funny song. And then John Bull Gwydda was a song I discovered, and I've sung a few times at the History Weeks. It's a really great tongue-in-cheek song. But he wrote this amazingly beautiful ballad called The Young Volunteer, and I've been singing this for quite a few years. I found it in an old songbook I had. I think it might have been given to me by Ronnie Drew many years ago. I had some classic songs, but this one was The Young Volunteer. It really says it all. And Higgins has a huge Clare connection, because he was elected in 1918 at the election in West Clare. And in fact, he stayed down there. He opened an Irish college in Carrigaholt. He had huge association with County Clare, so it's proper to that on this the final of my presentations that I honour him in some way. And the best way to honour him is, to me, one of the most beautiful love songs of any revolution, The Young Volunteer. Has come to strike a blow for freedom and the right. Proudly, gladly do I go to meet the coming fight. In life or death, in joy or in dread, no power can part us two. Under God my thoughts, yes my thoughts, they shall be of Aaron and of you. Blackbird Song, it will fill the grove, and the thrush, she will pipe once again. All the golden dreams she wove, they will haunt that lonely glen. Our dreams of love, our dreams of joy, our dreams of peace, oh, a store, they may ne'er come true. But prayers of mine, they shall never, never cease, for Aaron and for you. My heart was yours through all these tears. It was yours and the lands we love. We've pledged our faith in smiles and in tears to her and to God above.
dove, 'cause I've given my hopes, I've given my love, I've given my life to him, to her, and you. Yeah, to him, to her, and you.
This year I'd like to sing songs that I've written inspired by some of the characters I met, most particularly Peter Clancy, who I've really read a lot about, and I greatly admire his courage. And then of course the courage of the women I discovered. Everywhere I go now I read books about the women of the revolution, and they have inspired me to write a song as well, so that we remember them. So I hope you enjoy these songs, because this is my response as a writer to the writers I read about all those years ago. This next song was inspired by the story of Peter Clancy. I've read quite a lot about him. I never knew about him at all until I was studying 1916 with Brendan Begley, and I come across all these names that we'd never heard of. But he was a draper by trade. He trained in Kildalsford. He was originally from Cranny. He was born in Cranny. Trained in Kildalsford, then moved down to Newcastle West, and then to Youghal. Eventually ended up in Dublin in 1912, around that time, and he signed up immediately as soon as the volunteer movement began. He was a dedicated man for speaking Irish and promoting the Irish language. He soon made his way right into the heart of the volunteer movement. He fought with Dick McKee at the Four Courts, and the Four Courts saw so much of the battle. There are amazing stories of the bravery that went on in the Four Courts during 1916. He was sentenced to death, and that was commuted, and he came home and got right involved in the volunteer movement, and eventually was right at the centre of Collins's kind of secret little army. He was right at the top table. He was arrested in 1920, and he was murdered viciously in Dublin Castle with Dick McKee and a young man from Quinn called Conor Clune, who was a kind of an innocent bystander. He was in Dublin working with the Irish language, and he was just caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he too received a really brutal death. Clancy's death caused Collins no end of grief. He knew he'd lost one of his closest and greatest warriors, I suppose. And when I was writing the song, I saw his name, and I translated it from the Irish, and it came into I translated it into the Irish, and it came up as son of the ruddy warrior in the ancient language. And I thought ruddy wasn't really that poetic, so I changed it to crimson. I took my liberties as a writer and changed it to crimson, and this is the Crimson Warrior, and it's dedicated to Peter Clancy, and in fact dedicated to all the volunteers. They have an amazing story.
Ancient fire on the hillside, I am ember, come lay me down. Ancient thunder all along the night sky, I am courage, come lay me down. We are daughter and son of the Crimson Warrior, sister and brother of the Crimson Warrior. Across the fields, all along the valley, oh, you of freedom, come lay me down. Sacred tree, now rest me easy, come gather round, come lay me down. We are daughter and son of the Crimson Warrior, sister and brother of the Crimson Warrior.
I wrote a theatre show with Brenda Begley for 1916 commemorations. It was called Dublin Burning, and I got the title from a book I'd read about Dublin and the week in Dublin. Pretty harrowing accounts of the entire week of what went on. And I rang Brenda and said, let's do a show. So in the middle of it, I decided to write a song. It was originally narrative right through the play, Dublin Burning, and that was really inspired by what my initial reactions to this amazing story that was unfolding in my history lessons, because I have to say my school history is nothing at all to what I've learned in the last 8 or 9 years, and I've questioned that on a number of fronts. I'm glad I've discovered identities of people involved. I was drawn to by a guy called Michael O'Hanrahan, who was one of the people who were executed in May of 1916. And no relation, but it was just the name that drew me into that story, and I got delved further into it and read lots of books about 1916. So this song, Dublin Burning, I think I'm going to sing it for you because it was inspired by so many of these amazing characters. I hope you like it.
They came from faraway places to march on a freedom trail. They sang a new revolution from songs their fathers made. On a street all bright with the sunshine, in a city on Easter parade, they came to reclaim a nation from centuries and chains. Oh, Dublin burning. And they built their barricades high to shun the Charlie's cry. Oh, Dublin burning. Many men, women and children lay cold on the city clay. For what died the sons and the daughters of Erin, or the soldiers who passed their way. Oh, Dublin burning at the Mendicity, Stephen's Green, City Hall, South Dublin Union, on Marrowbone Lane, down at the forecourts, all along Sackville, Mount Street Bridge, North King Street. Dark cell of a military jail, soldiers kneel to pray. They fought their revolution and they died the martyr's way. Padraig Pearse, Tomas MacDonagh, Willie Pearse, Thomas Clark, Sean McDermott, Michael Hanrahan, John McBride, Joe Plunkett, Ned Daly, Jack Houston, Eamon Kent, Thomas Kent, James Connolly, Michael Mellon, Con Colbert, Roger Casement.
Eva Gore Booth has been a huge influence on me in recent years. I found her through the poetry of Alice Milligan, actually, because I started reading Alice Milligan, the revolutionary poet. And then I got into more poetry, and one led to the next, and then I discovered this amazing woman called Eva Gore Booth. Then I started reading her life. And she was sister of Constance Markievicz, born in a very privileged upbringing in Sligo. A friend of hers, Esther Roper, they became lifelong partners. And they fought for the right of women to choose. And it's incredible when you think back a few years ago, we had the referendum for equality. And Eva Gore Booth was fighting this fight 100 years ago. She had an underground magazine called Urania. And she wrote beautiful, beautiful poetry. This song, The Craggy Hill, is dedicated to her and all the women of the revolution, because it seemed to me that the women were left on the side. So I had this image of a craggy hill, and we just cast them up to the craggy hill, and we basically forgot about their courage and their involvement and their support, because they were there right through every stage of the revolution. They were part of it and driving it. So it's nice that in recent years we're beginning to read their stories, powerful testimonies, some horrific stories about the treatment doled out to them by both sides. So this song is dedicated to all the women of the revolution.
On a craggy hill, a long ago winter's morning, we watched the sun hanging with the moon. We thought this bloody war would soon be over. One day soon, you said, one day soon. But for you and me, this war never ended. We fought side by side, and soon we turned the gun. In this bitter, twisted world of our envy, here's the battle never won. I often think about you in the springtime, on a summer breeze, when I hear the cuckoo shrill. But when autumn falls around me like a thunder, I think of you on Craggy Hill. I left you there, somewhere on the hillside, where the hazel and the wildflower bloom. Ever since that day we parted, I hide the memory of you. You the poet who wrote about her comrades, you the artist who painted her in still. You've forgotten, so long forsaken. I hear you now on Craggy Hill. I hear you now on Craggy Hill.
Almost 8 years ago, I started out on a journey looking for the songs and the songwriters of the great cultural revolution, and I found them. I found so many of them. In recent years, I studied the songs and songwriters of County Clare, and I found an amazing treasure. So I'm thankful to all the writers who wrote our history. The events that I've discovered has been of huge influence to me as a writer. They have inspired me to write a few songs, and I sincerely hope you enjoyed my presentation today. I'm grateful to our historians, Tomás McConmara, Pádraig O'Rourke. I just have read your stuff, and it's a treasure to have you searching and digging into the history of County Clare and giving it to us. I am particularly delighted to be sharing the stage with Joe Hurtig, my pal Joe, and Joe Power from my dad's parish. And Sinead McCool, your book on the women has been an inspiration. And Mary McAuliffe, I've watched Mary on so many shows on TV. I've watched podcasts from various places around the world that she's been involved in, and she's shining a light on the women of the revolution. That has been a revelation for me. A lot of things we never knew, we're now beginning to know, and it's right and proper. So I look forward to reading the rest of the history. I look forward to see how this state unfolded over the next few years. But for now, it's been my pleasure. Thank you, the Clare County Council, as always. It's been a great journey for me, and I hope you all enjoyed it. See you soon. Bye-bye.